Hey everyone, it's Keep It Simple with me, Ashley, where I believe having a relationship with Jesus should be simple. I hope that this video brings you joy, hope, and the occasional laughter. This is my first video with my sweet friend, Ellie Lane. I hope you enjoy it. Hey everybody, I am here with my friend Ellie. Ellie Lane now. Ellie's been married for 3 months?
3 months.
3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. It seems like forever every time her and Clay, that's your husband's name, are together. They act like they are just like, you guys are going to always act like you're newlyweds. It's just so sweet.
We have to. You have to be intentional.
Yeah, you definitely have to be intentional, and you're really good at that.
Oh, thanks.
Yes. So, Ellie, I brought you here because I've always just admired your work ethic. Like, you are a go-getter.
Thank you. I'm not good at accepting compliments.
You're not good at no. I don't think a lot of women are. You know, I think it's just in our bones to not accept compliments because that's just who we are. It's like, I don't need a compliment. I just need to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a hard time with that too. And sometimes I think there's like ulterior motives to someone's compliment. Like, why are you complimenting me?
Right. Or you feel like, okay, now I need to give it back to them. Like,
right.
Yeah, I admire this about you too.
Yeah, like your shirt's really cute.
Yeah.
Exactly. So like I love your work ethic, and you have, for me, been somebody that I've always looked up to, and so I was really excited whenever I wanted to talk about this one subject, that there was no other person that I thought would work out better than you, especially because when I was working on this topic, you went through a pretty big life transition in the last 3 months. I mean, I guess if you've been married for 3 months.
Yes.
So between like your marriage and your jobs, and can you kind of explain a little bit about where were you 3 months ago?
So 3 months ago, I was kind of planning a wedding, to be honest. I was also working full-time for a company that I was very, very passionate about. I had actually worked there before and then left and had an opportunity to go back. And when that opportunity was presented to me, it was the first time in my life where I wasn't just a believer, but I was trying very intentionally for the first time in my life to not just have God in my back pocket, but like be traveling with him, letting him guide me. And so it was an opportunity that I didn't think would work for me. Like, my heart wasn't there. But I went to prayer. Into prayer, like hardcore about it.
Right.
And I felt a burning, like, this is where you need to go. When I was talking to God, and it kind of got to the point where I was almost wrestling with him about it, because I didn't understand why. I had been there before. I felt like I did all I could do, and I was ready to move on. And but trying to be intentional about following him.
Which is so hard.
It is so hard.
It's so hard, especially when I'm a go-getter too. So when we have these go-getter personalities, it's so hard sometimes seeking what God wants us to do,
right,
as opposed to what we think we want to do. And
sometimes I think that, like, my perception of it is God's going to tell me what to do, and he's going to tell me why.
Right.
That's not how it works. So he was telling me where to go, but not why, and that was hard for me. I'm a planner, and I'm a control freak. So it's like, okay, I'll be faithful, but first I need you to tell me why you want me to do this.
Yes, I understand that.
Yes, and so I went. And I loved it. I poured myself into it. And I had no idea why I was brought back there. But I knew it was for a very, specific reason. And I spent, 60 hours during the work week there. I worked every weekend. It was my life, and it kind of became where I found a lot of my identity and my purpose.
Well, yeah. If you're working 60 hours a week there, just Monday through Friday, not counting what you did on the weekends, that does become your identity. It's no longer like, I would imagine, were you able to attend baseball games for your kids or dinner times? how was that? Was that hard for you to do?
It was very hard. My family life was definitely impacted around this time. Clay and I we had a long distance relationship. He had moved to Claremore. We were engaged. We're trying to plan a wedding. We're doing all of these things to try to get our family in the place we want it to be. But I was always at work, and I'll say if I wasn't physically at work, my mind was still there.
Right.
So I was rushing from one thing to the other, but I may be there for that baseball game, but that's not where my mind was. I was emailing, I was calling, I was thinking about a problem that we needed to resolve. And so
it was more of in like, I'm here because I'm obligated as a mom to be here.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you're regretting like, why did I ever pay these sign-up fees? You
yes.
know?
Yeah.
Every time I'm like, my kids want to do these sports, like, okay, I'll sign you up. And then the first practice rolled around and I'm like, 6 o'clock practice on a Monday?
Yeah.
Like, I can't make that.
What are we doing? And then a 9 p.m. game or 8:30, and I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah. And then it gets postponed and postponed and postponed, and I'm like, I just can't handle this. So I could not imagine working the 60 hours. And it wasn't just like, so for people listening to this, like, your job title wasn't just like secretary. Not saying that that's a bad thing, but like, you were also in charge of other people's jobs, right? So like, it was a pretty large spot, position. I imagine very, even financially, a very good job.
Yeah, it definitely provided in a way that, I mean, was more than just meeting the bare essentials for our family. It was a wonderful opportunity to grow my leadership skills, and I loved the people. I mean, but there was a lot of pressure that came with the role I was in. I think a lot of pressure for everyone there. It's just a very high-performing company. Mm-hmm. And so I felt that, and I wanted to perform to that. And but one thing I did was, like I said, it was the first time in my life I really traveled through a season with God leading me.
So even in all of this busyness, even these 60 plus hours a week, planning a wedding, long distance relationship, and you're at this point a single mom to a 7-year-old boy, 6-year-old boy.
6-year-old, almost 7.
Yeah. You're still having an intentional relationship with Jesus at this place.
Yeah, I have seen a lot of times when I'm really struggling, that's a time where I would cry out to God. But then once I'd get my stuff together, I'd kind of pack up and move on and know He was there. But I just thought, I have this figured out. I know it's best for me. But I lived life that way for a long time. And I looked back and I realized I had experienced a lot of heartache. I had made a lot of poor choices. And it was because I was doing it based off of where my own heart and my own head were taking me. And I didn't want to live that way anymore. And that's when I started really journeying and trusting God and trying to know that He'll be faithful and He won't mislead me. I'll mislead myself, but He's not going to mislead me.
Right.
And so with Him calling me there, even though it was a lot of time away from my family, a lot of energy, and I was definitely tired. But I can remember having conversations with Clay, and he would say, you know, are you sure you want to keep doing this? Are we doing okay? Like, are you okay? And I told him, I know it's okay because I know this is where God wants me, but I still didn't know why. And then we approached a season within the company that was very difficult. And when it all started kind of coming out, I thought, this is why. I knew this is why. And God was very clear with me, like, this is why I've put you here. And as I started going through that and working through that, I felt so equipped for that season within that company.
Oh, I love that word.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is, because I think that that's the biggest thing that most women, people struggle with, is they don't think that they're equipped enough to do something. And I love the fact that, like, God gives you this job that originally you didn't know why you were there, but then through the growth of why you're there, you do realize, like, I am equipped to handle the things that God already knew was going to happen.
But I wouldn't have been equipped if it weren't for that season of it was so tough, it was so hard, and it took so much. And it took a lot of, faith, because there were, times where as a family you're just like, do we want to keep doing this? And to get to that point, it was so, I did feel equipped, but I know it was because of the hard things that we had gone through leading up to that moment.
Right.
And so that new season hit, and I felt equipped. We navigated through it, and I say we, I mean Clay and I, but also there was a lot of faith involved in it, a lot of prayer, a lot of trust. And I mean, I didn't have perfect days, but I feel like I made all of the decisions that I should have made because I was going to God with it.
Right.
And so we went through all of that, and then I kept telling myself, and God kept telling me, that I'm going to experience fruit from this season at the end of this. And I thought I was being the super faithful person, and I was so excited to see what God had in store and where this was taking me.
Right.
But I didn't realize until now, looking back, I had really put God in a box. Even though I felt like my faith had grown a lot, I had an idea of what that was going to look like. I knew what would make me happy. And so when I knew God was promising me, you know, that he was going to be faithful and, you know, just follow me, stick this out, work hard, we're going to get through this, and you're going to experience the fruit from the season, I was like, okay, so that means I'm going to get to be an influence in this company, and I'm going to get to be part of the culture
You're
change.
thinking I'm going to be moving up the ladder.
Yes.
Like, the opportunities are going to be even bigger than Claremore, Oklahoma.
Yes, and that's where my heart's at, like my job. And
as soon as you started getting comfortable with that thought,
I started.
What happened?
I was so excited, but I was set on it, and I started experiencing no peace. Whereas when I was going through this season of trials and struggle, I was doing it with God. It was his will, and I had a peace like nothing I had experienced before. And now here I am getting through this hard season, about to experience what he's promised me. But I never stopped to think he promised, he knows better than I do about what I need and what's going to bring me joy. And so I started working in my own direction, like, you know, he promised me this stuff. He promised me that, you know, my faithfulness is going to play out and he's going to be faithful. And so I'm going to pour myself in, and that's what this looks like. And I started really experiencing like a lack of peace, a loss of comfort. And I was pretty frustrated, to be honest. And I know you're not supposed to say you're angry at God, and I knew that. And
but I had my moments. Oh yeah.
Yeah. But you know you're not supposed to be, and so that can kind of play out in other places in your life. I was frustrated. I was angry. I didn't understand, how can I go through such a hard season and struggle but feel so equipped? And now here I am. I'm supposed to be enjoying this time.
Right. And not just that. It's like, okay, God, like up to this point, I've done and I've listened to you, and you should be making me not feel this way.
Right.
I should have like complete peace about like, I've got through the hard times, now it's supposed to be easy.
Yeah, exactly.
And one thing I know, like I love in the book of James, it talks about how going through hard times is like basically being in the soil, and the soil produces strength, not to endure the good times, but to endure even more of the difficult times.
Exactly.
Meaning that like the hard times that we're in now, they're not going to be the only hard seasons we go through, that they're just going to later on increase. But God's given us the ability to basically produce strength that we didn't even know we had to endure the even harder seasons.
That we didn't know we were going to have.
That we didn't know we were going to have. That is beyond imaginable. Like, so that's one of the main things that I wanted to talk about today. And obviously just you even sharing your part of your story, which I love, is just that, you know, I've even personally gone through a really difficult season in the last 2 years. And through that, I do feel like I've gained more strength. But not just that, I've gained compassion. I have gained patience. Sometimes.
You have to.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But I really believe it was in the last 2 years that I've just been sitting in this soil, knowing that, like, are things going to get easy? Yeah. And is it going to produce great things? Absolutely. But more than anything, it's going to produce strength for the harder seasons.
Right.
So now I know that while you are at this company, you get married. And what I'm about to say, it's going to be like a bomb for everybody. You quit this job.
I quit my job.
You quit your job. How long after you married Clay Because, I mean, this is all in the last 3 months. You have this great company. You're excited. Like, things are good. You think you're moving up the ladder. Then, bam, you're married. And then, by the way, I'm quitting my job.
Yeah.
And you're a go-getter like me. Mm-hmm. So, like, that's a faith.
It was a jump.
It's like faith.
That's an understatement.
Yes. So how long after, because I know Clay well enough to know, and I know you well enough to know that, like, he's going to love and support you no matter what. Mm-hmm. But you're obviously going through this really hard season of feeling kind of, I don't want to say, is defeated the right word? Hopeless, maybe?
I was
frustrated is a good one.
Frustrated. Even settling into that bitterness feeling a little bit.
Oh, yeah, because they're two of the same thing, you know, just because we just think, like, okay, God, I've done everything. And that's been the hardest thing for me the last 2 years is, like, okay, God, I did what you asked me to do. I stepped away from something that I loved to pursue. For me, it was pursue motherhood.
Right.
Which, being a mom's great, but, like, my go-getter personality, I'm like, is this going to bring me enough peace in my life? And you think it's going to be easy. Mm-hmm. And I have found that obedience to God does not mean it's going to be easy.
Never.
That obedience almost means pain, you know, that how, like, even through the pain and the trials and the frustrations and the bitterness, how obedient are we going to be to the things that God's called us to do, the things that He's told us to do?
Yeah.
So how long was it after you married Clay did you step away from this company?
So I actually went into prayer about it, and God was pretty clear with me that you need to leave. And that was not, I was like, no. You told me fruit, and this is what I thought that meant. But again, me thinking I know better than God about what's best for me. So I turned my resignation in actually the week before we got married.
Wow.
It was crazy. It's not like me. You know, that was...
No, because I have this stable job. I'm going to be able to provide for my new family. Like, and then it's just, I'm throwing this all away. Like, a month from now, I'm not going to be receiving this paycheck that I had been planning on anymore. Like, that's hard.
In the middle of planning all this and about it. Yeah, it was definitely, and I pride myself in being a provider. So that was there was a lot of pride that I had to put down for it. But I saw where again, looking back on my life, the times that I thought I understood what was going to happen, what needed to happen, what was best for me, and I made choices based off of that. And it was misleading. It brought on some of the most painful times in my life. And then I look back at the times that I didn't understand, I didn't know, I didn't get it, I didn't see where it was going, but it was what God called me to do. And those were the best choices that could have been made. It was following what He told me to do. And so it was just that moment where it's like, this makes absolutely no sense. This isn't who I am. You don't want your perception. You don't want people to perceive you a certain way. I was proud that I was a provider. You know, I was proud that I had been a single mom and I had done all of these things for my family. And so there were so many things I struggled with, but, you know, it's one of those deals where it's like, I don't get it, but I know God is good. I know He's faithful, and I have to be too. And so I turned in my resignation, and that all sounds really great and like, oh, okay, good job, Ellie. But I did not follow through with my time that I gave to leave my job. I stayed. I even cleared out my office and still stayed because I didn't want to do it. I knew it was right.
Oh man, I get it.
I knew what I was called to do.
Yeah.
I didn't want to. And
those are the midnight conversations that you have with God. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Like, do you know the amount of pain that this is going to bring to me? So when you finally overcame that, I imagine, actually I remember this conversation with you, Clay's the one that finally was like, this has to be enough.
Yeah. We've got to figure something out.
Which is so important to tell, like, other people that you guys need to have somebody in your life that's willing to say, this is not working out for you.
Yeah. And for us, for our family.
Right.
I mean, he saw how much it was hurting me. And I don't even think because the situation was bad as much as it was not God's will for me to be there anymore.
Right.
And that'll weigh you down and that will hurt you. That's where the lack of peace. I was trying so hard to force something I wanted to fit into my life.
Yeah.
And it was tearing me apart. And to have him say, you know, I love you and we need more. Like, our lives, we need more than what is happening here.
Right. And the more is not, we need you to provide more.
Mm-hmm.
We need you to be here more.
Yeah.
More apparent, more evident.
Yeah.
So, and I know that we're running out of time, but you quit this job,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go home.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're a lot like me. I have worked since I was 14 years old.
Yeah.
I have waitress tables. I have babysat. I have never not been doing something because our pride, like you said, is attached to our name and who we are and what we do and how much we make and
Mm-hmm.
how we're seen, how we're known, especially when we start life so young.
Right.
Getting married young, having babies young. I do think that, and I think a lot of young moms struggle with this too, is like people automatically assume that the young moms aren't going to make it. Well,
You want to beat that stigma.
exactly, but sometimes you cause yourself to overwork, and that's obviously where God's like, okay, Ellie, I need you to slow down.
Be still.
Right. And so he switches roles on you. God does.
Majorly.
And you become obedient
Mhm.
hesitantly. I laugh because I get it 110%. But then you're home, but you have 2 kids in school,
Yeah.
and now you're not working, and what are you doing? Like, how has that been? Because I can say this because I'm there. Like, I'm going on, I guess, 2 years? 2 years in December of quitting my full-time job, starting a crazy cookie business that God's been super faithful to provide for. But even now, he's like, okay, Ashley, you need to, like, slow down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, what has changed in your life so much just by being willing to say, like, okay, I'm gonna just lay it all aside, and it's gonna be painful, and the season's gonna be hard, but I know that through my obedience and through my perseverance that God's faithful with his promises. And sometimes we don't know what those promises are.
No.
Like you said, it's like, okay, you want me to do this, but can you give me the why?
Right.
And that's hard because I don't think God gives us the why all the time. Sometimes
No.
it's just the trust that he's ever faithful.
Yeah.
And he keeps his promises.
And sometimes he gives you that why later on, and you're like, no.
Yeah.
That's not what I wanted.
Right.
And that's kind of where I was at when I quit, and that's what I'm doing now is I quit, and immediately I went into this mode of like, okay, so then his being faithful means now I'm going to find another job, and I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be like, oh, this is what God had in store for me. It's so amazing. I still was trying to fit in God into this box and what he was going to do for me, because I think it's interesting if you have an issue and you know there's 2 options on how you could handle it and you're truly struggling. It's super easy to go to God and say, I have these 2 options. Which one am I supposed to do? That's not hard. You're seeking help.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone were to walk up to you and say, you know, here are 2 options that are happy and great and fun, you think you know yourself well enough to know, like, oh, this is the option I pick. Like, I'm not going to immediately just naturally go to God and say, like, hey, which one do you think I should have? Because we know what we want. We know what we think makes us happy.
Right.
And so I leave work and I'm like, I know what's going to make me happy. It's another job, a career. That's where I'm going to be. And that wasn't the case.
You found that wasn't it.
No.
Yeah.
And I kept being still because that's what he was telling me to do. And that's what my husband was telling me to do. You know, he had me promise 2 weeks. 2 weeks of being still, not making decisions, not trying to do anything, change anything, being home and being still.
So for the first time, you got to experience eating Cheetos on your couch and watching what you want on TV.
No, I still couldn't do that.
You still couldn't do it?
I still couldn't do that, but I was not going to go find a job. That was my thing.
Yeah.
And so I deep cleaned our house and rearranged our everything.
Yeah.
But I didn't search for a new job. And I realized, and I'm still realizing, because learning something, it doesn't necessarily happen overnight. And
no.
It's kind of comforting to know, because
Yeah.
sometimes we think we're going to have this
Yeah.
realization and then everything will change. It doesn't. You have a realization and then you have to work through stuff still.
Absolutely.
And I realized that this season, it is hard, but it is my fruit.
Mm-hmm.
This is God being faithful.
That's good.
This is it, my family. I'm getting to be home with my family. My husband comes home every day, and literally right now, and I never thought this would be exciting to me, but my job is to love him and love my kids.
Yeah.
I'm getting to enjoy that.
I love that.
And it's something that, looking back, I would have thought that being home was almost a punishment for me, for my personality.
Oh, no, I understand. Yeah.
And so if God would have told me what that fruit was from this season, I wouldn't have probably wanted it.
I love that.
That's not what I want.
I love that. I think that's like, I think that's something that all of us need to grasp in our heart, is that when we're seeking answers from God, is that sometimes the answer he gives us isn't what we want to hear.
Right.
So he can't just give it to us. He can't just give us the answer. He has to slowly reveal it one bite at a time.
Yeah.
And I almost think that he waits for us to love like that tiny bite, enjoy it.
Learn to appreciate it.
And before he gives us another bite,
Yeah.
And so I love that. So more than anything, there's so much more to your story, and I definitely want to have you back here and share more of it, because you're just one of my, I want to say, is it weird to say sisters that just your walk with Jesus is just so, it's so inspiring to me, that I know it's going to be inspiring to other people who see this, because I know that there are other moms who maybe they're struggling with, they know that God's calling them to quit their job, but they don't know why. And I love that your story is sometimes God's not going to always tell you why.
Right.
But he'll reveal to you one bite at a time why.
He'll be faithful, and he knows what's best for us.
He does, absolutely. And then I think about maybe even the mom that is staying at home right now, who feels well, I had these kids, so I have to be home with them. But deep down, they don't want to be home.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. I also would want to tell those moms that, God's not done writing your story, and that he's ever faithful. He's faithful when we're home with our children, and he's faithful when we're working a job, white collar, blue collar, being a waitress, whatever it is, that God's faithful to his promises. But the thing I think about the most is he treats us just like children that are learning to walk.
Yeah.
That he's not going to just sit us down on the pavement and then walk away and say, I hope you know how to walk, figure it out.
Yeah.
That just like we teach our children how to walk, we sit them down and we stand in front of them in arm's length, that God does the same thing for us, that he's there ready and willing to catch us when and if, because we will, when we fall.
Yeah.
So I just want to say thank you again so much for just being here. And the last thing that I want you to do, is there anything that you would say to any other people who are maybe just struggling? Is there anything that you want to tell them, the people that are struggling to just make the jump?
Just know that you can think you have everything lined out, and your plan is, fail safe and fail proof and safe and what you want. And God might be calling you in a totally different direction. But if you just trust him, it will work out so much better than any plan you could ever write. He knows you better than you know yourself, and the plan that he has for you is one that you can trust. It's the one that will give you peace and happiness and joy, even on the hard days.
Right.
It's the one way you can go that is not going to fail you. And so just know that doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but you can trust him. You can trust him with yourself. Absolutely.
Thanks everyone for joining us on this episode with my friend Ellie. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And remember,